So today I want to talk about one of the most common problems I see when it comes to scenes. When working with my students, I'll often ask them, okay, tell me about the scene you're going to write. What is the scene? And they will say something like, it's a scene about my wedding. It's a scene about moving into my new house. It's a scene about the first day at my new job. And I say to them, wrong, wrong, wrong. None of those are scenes. So if you are thinking about your scenes in the wrong way, you're going to get your plot off track. I'm going to tell you how to fix this coming up. So the first thing to keep in mind about scenes is that scenes are the building blocks for your book. They are where your plot is created. Now, plot cannot exist without events. So therefore, your scenes are where your reader lives through an event with you. I often say scenes are synonymous with events. With this in mind, plot is not created by recounting everything that happened at your wedding. Your wedding is not plot. However, throwing up at the altar on the groom, that is the start of plot. So I hope you understand this really important concept. A scene needs to exist because of an event. Events are synonymous with scenes. I'm probably going to say that a lot in this video, but I really want you to understand what that means. Let me go back to an earlier example that I gave you, moving into a new house. That's not plot. I move into a new house does not create plot. What would create plot? Moving into a new house and discovering a family of possums living in your attic. All of a sudden, something happens. So you have the beginning of plot. Plot requires events. And if scenes are the building blocks for your plot, scenes have to contain an event. In fact, the event is the whole reason this scene exists. So back to my earlier examples, my first day at my new job. That's not an event. If you spill coffee on your boss your first day of your new job, suddenly you have the setup for plot. So in order to create the plot for your book, the first thing you need to ask yourself is this all-important question: what happened? So at first you'll start to remember things like the start of a new job, a move, going to prom, having that birthday party. That is not plot. Plot is created when things happen. So if you're going to write about the birthday party, the scene needs to recount the big event that happened at that birthday party. Now, does that mean you can't ever write about a birthday party? Does that mean you can't ever write about your new job? Of course not. What I want you to understand in this video is that scenes are synonymous with events. I told you I'd say that again. So what I want you to understand in this video is that there are two different kinds of writing in your book. You don't just have scenes, but when you do write a scene, I want you to write a scene in the correct way, which means including an event. You're writing toward that event. The other kind of writing that exists in your book is transition writing. And transition writing is fabulous for describing a chunk of time, for describing your first day at work, for describing your wedding in general terms. So what is the difference between transition writing and scene writing? It's really simple. When you anchor your reader in time, they expect a scene. So if you say, one day, I'm going to expect you to lead into an event. So one of the things transition writing is great for is describing events in general terms. So if you want to describe your move, you can use transition writing. Let me give you an example. The move was difficult. It didn't help that we were going through a heat wave. It seemed like Pablo spent more time resting than he did bringing boxes down the stairs. His forehead covered in sweat. He always was searching for his water bottle. And when he didn't find it right away, it brought on a surge of inappropriate anger. Finally, after 3 long days, we succeeded in getting everything into the new house. So that is not a scene. And how do you know it's not a scene? Well, for one thing, I didn't create a time anchor. So if I give this a time anchor, a reader is going to expect for something to happen. So if I set this up differently and I said, that Tuesday, we started the process of moving. The fact that I have said that Tuesday means that your reader doesn't realize this, but unconsciously, they are going to expect you to lead into an event. They're going to expect something to happen that Tuesday. On the other hand, if you just describe what the move was like, you don't set up that time anchor, your reader doesn't have that same expectation. So time anchor is synonymous with scene, is synonymous with event. So how do you know which to use? Do you use transition writing and describe an event in general terms? Or do you create a scene that exists because something is going to happen at the end of that scene? Honestly, it's as easy as asking yourself the question, does something happen? When I anchor a reader in time, they are expecting a scene. They are expecting for something to happen. As an example, one day we decided to go to the beach. I've anchored the reader in time and they're going to expect for something to happen that day at the beach. On the other hand, if I just want to describe my days at the beach, I don't create that time anchor. I might say something like, days at the beach went by slowly and quickly at the same time. If something is going to happen at my wedding, I might set up a time anchor like this. The day of my wedding, I woke up before my alarm sounded. So the day of my wedding is that time anchor. And the minute you do that, your reader is going to expect something to happen because you've put us in a certain place and time. And that indicates to your reader that there's going to be an event, that something is going to occur. On the other hand, if nothing is going to occur and you just want to describe your wedding, don't create that time anchor. You might write something like this. My wedding was filled with wonderful mishaps, right? That sentence doesn't anchor me in time, and I will use that sentence as a starting point to describe all of the mishaps that happened during my wedding. So if you anchor me in time, you have already started to give me a scene. And if you're giving me a scene, I expect for something to happen. If nothing is going to happen and you have a general description of your wedding, of the prom, of your birthday, of your first day at work, don't give me that time anchor. So let me give you an example from a published memoir. This is from Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. In this excerpt, the author does both of the things that I'm trying to teach you in this video. First of all, she describes Christmas in general terms. She uses transition writing to create a description of what Christmas was like for her. Then she anchors us in time and gives us a scene, and something happens. So let me start with the transition writing, talking about Christmas in general terms. The holiday season brought all the distraction I needed. My brother and I would sleep under the Christmas tree lights, eyes closed, watching the backs of our eyelids turn blue, orange, red, and purple, calling out the colors as they appeared to us. At least once, our mother would wrap us in blankets in the back seat of the car with snacks and drinks, and we'd drive off into a snowy night. She wouldn't say where we were going, but inevitably, we would wind up heading north. With the downtown of Fort Wayne nearly abandoned, my mother would weave the car down one-way streets heading west, then east, featuring display after display of historical holiday cheer. Our official tour began at the bread factory, where a mechanical wheel of never-ending sliced bread actually never stopped slicing, and the smell of hot flour, sugar, and yeast entwined itself with Christmas. Okay, so this excerpt actually goes on a bit longer, but I'm going to cut it off there because I think you get an idea of what transition writing sounds like. One thing I want you to notice is how she set up this section of text. This is how she does it. The holiday season brought all of the distraction I needed. So she hasn't anchored us in a specific point in time. It's the holiday season. Now we're going to get into the scene, and I want you to notice the time anchor. On Christmas morning, we woke to a tree lousy with gifts, some wrapped and at least one too big for wrapping. So on Christmas morning, there's your time anchor. Now we're going to expect something to happen. And sure enough, it does. On Christmas morning, we woke to a tree lousy with gifts, some wrapped and at least one too big for wrapping. My brother and I jumped out of bed and raced toward the tree, but I stopped just short of my brother and my mother's feet, waiting for the presents to be handed out, like my mother told us would happen. I stood still, my eyes focusing, unfocusing, and focusing again on what I suddenly recognized as a small drum set. My mother did not notice my hesitation before I slid into the spot below her, beside my brother. As excited as we were for our gifts, she may have been even more anxious for us to tear her careful wrapping asunder and lay our glad eyes on the material fruits of her labor. My mother handed my brother a box double the size of his head, covered in what looked like little hand-drawn Christmas trees and ornaments. My secret badness came back to bite, and what it had taken left me sadder than I knew what to do with. In the time it took my brother to rip the tree pattern paper separating him from his brand new yellow Tonka dump truck, I realized Santa Claus wasn't real. I'd found this secret place inside to shield my bad self, the part that chose not to tell the truth. But it had never occurred to me everyone might have a secret bad self, a self that didn't tell the truth because it had learned the same lessons I'd learned and knew the quiet and the dark could be good places to hide from screams and slapped. Something cracked, and now I didn't get to delight in the magic, but instead had to pretend like the adults. I'd done it to myself. In search of my shadow, I'd lost some of my childish wonder and hadn't realized it was a no-trade deal. Okay, so she starts with a time anchor, which sets up a scene and something happens. What happens? She realizes suddenly that Santa doesn't exist. Keep in mind that an event can actually be something you realize. Something you realize can have a huge impact on the plot. And here's a great example of that. She realizes Santa doesn't exist, and that's going to affect what happens next. So why am I harping so much on events? Because it is the event in your scene that you will connect to create structure. Talk a lot more about this in other videos and in my free 7-part video class. If you want lots more information on memoir writing structure, sign up for my free 7-part class. You'll find the link right below this video. Otherwise, I'd appreciate any likes or subscribes. Take care, guys.